Okay, so today we are going to talk about proportional word problems. So we're going to do a little bit of review, and then we're going to add in just some kind of common word problems that we could set up with a proportion. All right, so a little bit of review. Remember the percent proportion. We always put the percent on the right-hand side, so we always have something over 100, either x over 100 or the percentage they give us. So let's start with number 1. In number 1, we're going to be given the 15%, and then we can see right next to us it says of 120. So when making this proportion, we are going to set it up with that 15% on the right-hand side. Then we have to think of our is over of wording. So if it's of 120, that 120 is going to go on the bottom, and the is going to go on the top. So then we are going to cross multiply. So we get 100x equals, and then remember, just for tomorrow's quiz, you can use a handheld calculator for that. But if you don't have a handheld calculator, you're going to have to do this all by hand. So 120 minus or times 15 gives us 1800. And when you divide by 100 on both sides, you get x is equal to 18. And remember, for labeling purposes, the only time we're going to put that percent sign on it is that if it's asking to find a percent. In this case, it's not. All right, so second problem, we have 12% of what number is 42. So setting up my percent proportion, 12% on top, and it says is 42. So when we look back over here at that percent proportion layout, we have the is number. So we're going to put 42 on top and x on the bottom, and we're going to cross multiply. And when we cross multiply, we get 12x equals 42 times 100 is 4200. And when I divide by 12, 4200 divided by 12 is equal to 350. So those were both from yesterday's lesson. All right, so now we're going to move down to number 3. You got 35 problems correct on a test out of 40 problems. What percent did you get? So if I take a look at just the question, it asks what percent did you get? So with the percent proportion, we can automatically see we are missing the percentage, so that has to be our x value over 100. And then the rest is a ratio. So you got 35 problems correct on a test out of 40. So you have to kind of think about some real relationships here. So you know that when I write a score, I put the top number as what you got correct and the bottom number as the total. So we call this type of problem a whole type problem. The part goes on top, 35, and the whole, or what the test was out of, goes on the bottom. So like I've been saying with these problems, we are going to do a whole lot of cross multiplying. So we have 40x equals 3500. And when we divide by 40 on both sides, remember we're looking for a percentage, and that percentage is 87.5%. And that makes a lot of sense because the score is close to, 5 points missing, and 87.5% is very close to 100. All right, problem number 4. You've read 72 pages in a book. This is 30% of the total number of pages in the book. How many total pages are in the book? So the question is asking us to find the total, or the whole, what the book is from front to back. So when I set up the percent proportion, I can see right here that it's giving me the percentage red. So that's 30 over 100. And it tells me there's 72 pages that you have read. So you've only read the part of that. So we're looking for the whole. And you can go back over here on the left and use this part whole little setup. And I talked in my 6th period class yesterday about this. every day you're going to be learning a new proportional setup. So it's good to maybe like take something and write them off to the side, or like a note card, or a sheet of paper, and write all these like little proportional setups. So today, like, you're going to talk part and whole. So when we go back and we solve this part whole problem, when we cross multiply, we get 30x equals 7,200. And when I divide by 30 on both sides, 7,200 divided by 30 gives us 240. And that makes sense because 30% of a book is pretty small amount read. So you've read 72 out of 240 pages. So you have to go back and think, do these number answers make sense? All right, taking a look at number 5. Number 5, there were 30 questions on the social studies test. You got 80% of those questions correct. How many questions did you get correct? So in this case, we want to know the part, or what you actually did get correct. So if we look and kind of write back on this box, the part over the whole, you don't know what you got correct, but you do know there were 30 questions on the test, and you know you got an 80 out of 100. Cross multiply to solve and figure out how many questions you got. So you have 100x equals 2,400. And when I divide by 100 on both sides, 2,400 divided by 100 gives me 24. X equals 24. I'm going to label this pages because I got 24 pages, or I'm sorry, not 24 pages, 24 correct. So 24 correct. I should have actually labeled, what I was thinking is I should have labeled this one here, pages, since we're talking about labeling with percent. All right, so Jim exercised 30 minutes a day, 6 more minutes than yesterday. What percent of an hour does Jim exercise? So this one's a little tricky, so we're going to focus on the question first. What percent of an hour does Jim exercise? So when we set this up, percent of an hour, so we don't know the percentage. So we know this has to be x over 100. Focus on the parts you know, because you don't really have to set these up in any certain order. But you do know the percent goes on the right-hand side. So the rest of it, we have to figure out the numbers that go on the top and the bottom of the left fraction. Jim exercised for 30 minutes today, 6 more minutes than yesterday. So 30 minutes today and 6 more minutes than yesterday. Well, if 30 minutes is 6 more than yesterday, that means I have to take away 6. That means I did 24 minutes yesterday. And we want to find the percent that Jim did exercise yesterday. So we're going to put 24 minutes on top and 30 minutes on the bottom. So it didn't give you very direct information here. It made you figure out the amount of minutes that he did yesterday in order to figure out what percent that is. Now I go about cross multiplying, so I get 30x equals 2,400. And when I divide by 30 on both sides, this should be one you could do by canceling out zeros and dividing, but 2,400 divided by 30 is 80. And I know that 80% sounds about right because 24 out of 30 is pretty close. All right, the last two. The school has a population of 2,000 students. If 85% of those students passed both sections of I-STEP, how many students passed both sections and how many students did not pass both sections? So we're looking for 2 different answers. The one thing that always sticks out to me in these problems is when there's a percent, I automatically see it. And that's always the first thing I want to go put in my problem. And if I notice the question says what percent, it makes me want to go put that x over 100. So it's like I have half my problem automatically there. So now I need to figure out, am I looking for the part or am I looking for the whole? So the school population has 2,000 students. Well, if a population has 2,000 students, that's the entire school. So it's got to be the whole. And we're looking for just the students that passed the sections on the I-STEP test. So we don't know how many. That's the X. So I'm going to figure out my students that passed both sections first. So 100x equals, and then do your 2,000 times 85 to get 170,000, 170,000. Divide that by 100, which is 1,700. So I know that 1,700 students passed. How do I figure out the students that did not pass? Well, it's what's left over from the whole. So if 1,700 out of 200 passed, that leaves 300 students who did not pass. And I've answered both questions. All right, last one. Out of the 65 girls that tried out for the soccer team, 39 girls made the first cut. Did more than half make the first cut? What percentage of girls made the first cut? So right there, bam, saw it. What percent? So I need x over 100. And then I have to look back. 65 girls, 39 girls made the team. So the part is 35. The whole is 65. Do the cross multiplication. 65x, 39 times 100 gives me 3,900. Divide by 65. And that means 60% of the girls that tried out made the team. But I had two questions. What percent made the team or first cut, and did more than half make the first cut? So then you have to say, is 60% more than half? Well, I know 1/2 is equivalent to 50%. So yes, more than half made it. All right, so in review, yesterday we talked about the is over of proportion with the percent proportion. And today we covered the part whole proportion. So percent still on the right, over 100. This time we're going to set it up as part over whole.